scrutiny review panel, which is examining the relationship between the parishes and the government. So this meeting is being recorded and streamed live, and the transcript will appear on the States Assembly website at a later date. If I could just check that everybody has their mobile phones and electronic devices switched to public, switched to silent even, not public. And we have approximately an hour and 15 minutes for this hearing. So if we can start with introductions. I'm Deputy Helen Miles. I'm the Chair of the Parishes and Government Review Panel.
I'm Deputy Catherine Curtis. I'm the Vice Chair of the panel.
Constable Richard Honeycomb from St One.
Thank you. Minister.
Deputy Mayor Hegarat, Minister for Justice and Home Affairs.
Chief Inspector Chris Beachy, Operational Support and Director of Intelligence.
Morning, Chief Inspector Craig Jackson, Response and Community Policing.
Good morning, Kay Bryden, Chief Officer for Justice and Home Affairs.
Lovely, thank you very much. Our questions today are really separated into two areas, that being the honorary policing system and also firearms licensing and certification. So I'm sure we're going to end up having quite an interesting discussion. So, Minister, the first question for me, before we discuss specific operational and policy matters, we'd really like to hear your general views on the honorary policing system.
Well, to be honest, my knowledge was fairly limited until I joined SOJP and got sort of pretty involved with the honorary police, particularly whilst seconded to what was then the sub-police station out at St Bullards. And of course, you then policed the west of the island. So my experience has been sort of fairly hands-on from the point of view that as a police officer, I worked alongside them. They were an exceptional resource for us at that time because you were often on your own. And so in relation to road traffic management, the ability to be able to utilise them was phenomenal. In the latter part of my career, from the point of view of, we used to do tasking and coordinating group with the honorary police. So the centenaires used to come and basically we'd look at the intelligence and we'd sort of share ideas and opportunities. I think the honorary system in Jersey is probably one that a lot of the world would like to have as well, particularly when you look at the opportunities for diversion in relation to the parish hall system, which obviously there's a few little things that we're going to look at in relation to the remaining on when they do full checks on people, that might still show up. So obviously that's something that we'll look at. But I think as an island, we are very lucky to have this resource.
Okay. You said that you first knew about the honorary police when you started your policing career. Can you just tell us when that was?
1989. I was obviously aware of it before then, from the point of view of centenaires, etc. Through the community around me, I was aware of it. But the actual sort of role and what they actually did, I think over the period of my time in the States of Jersey Police, that has changed dramatically. So I think in the past it had been a fairly sort of low level of input from the honorary police, but I think as things have progressed over the last, well, it's now 35 years, I think it's obvious that their role has increased and they do a lot more and they're trained to a different level than what they were at the very start of it all. So I think the role has progressed significantly.
So what benefits do you believe then the honorary police provide to public safety and community policing?
I think they provide a lot of benefit from the point of view that they have a lot of knowledge and understanding of the community in which they live, because obviously they are living within those communities and they're from a day-to-day basis. I think in relation to sort of events, they've taken on quite a lot of the responsibility for those events. If you look at things like the Battle of Flowers, Battle of Britain, previously all of that was actually done by the States of Jersey Police. And as time has progressed, and those events, a lot of them have been managed by the Honorary Police, both within the actual as an example with the Battle of Flowers, they are the ones that coordinate the movement of all of the floats. They are the ones that sit and monitor everything that's going along, obviously alongside the States of Jersey Police, because, any serious incident would be taken on by the States of Jersey Police. But the honoraries do a lot of work within the community, but more importantly, as I said, they know the community in which they live.
Okay, thank you. Do you think the working relationship between the Honorary Police and States of Jersey Police is good?
I believe it is, but I think it's always going to be about different people, different personalities. We have 12 honorary police, we have 12 parishes, so we have 12 different honorary police units, if you like. So I think it is going to, it's going to be dependent on personality sometimes, but I do think that the overall working relationship, and I think there's a huge significant acknowledgement from those both at the top and all the way through the States of Jersey Police of the work and the commitment of the honorary police and what they give to the community as a whole. And there is a lot of work that goes on with those individuals. And of course, there's, certainly when in the past, when, the States of Jersey Police were running community awareness days or were running things within the community, that was all worked in with the honorary police as well as all of the other agencies. So the one thing that I'm really pleased about, and you will be obviously, of course, is the building a safer community, because of course that is where we start to then get back into actually working more on a team dynamic. So any of the sort of areas where there's concern, whether that be, After Pass and Blards Bay, Le Kennebec, or, First Tower, wherever those concerns will be, it's an opportunity having it under that umbrella to bring them all in together to work together. So I think it's...
Have you got any formal structures or documents or memorandum of understanding with the Honorary Police?
There is a memorandum, Minister Barter, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Apologies.
go for it.
There is a memorandum of understanding between States Jersey Police and the Honorary Police. I think it was 2017. That's due for review. And actually part of this year, back end of this year and beginning of next year, is a review of the memorandum of understanding, especially that slight change in operating practices for the States of Jersey Police. But there is technically an underlying MOU.
Okay. And do you think honorary officers are aware of it?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And what about States of Jersey Police officers?
Certainly within the community team, I wouldn't necessarily say all of police officers.
Because you've got over 200
Yes.
officers. Because I think one of the things that we've heard, certainly from quarters of the Honorary Police, is that quite often some of the States of Jersey Police officers don't really understand the role of Honorary Police and don't really value the role of the Honorary Police. Do you think that's a fair comment?
I'd certainly challenge the value. I think, like the Minister says, the working relationship is extremely strong. I chair an operational meeting on a monthly basis with Chef Kamara and Boujard, and we chat about any issues, good working practices. Even Joao sits on our quality assurance board with regards to our emergency services contact centre, control centre, so that we can feed any issues through the control room as well. Wouldn't necessarily say, again, like the Minister alludes, personalities, but I think that the actual working practices and the relationship is extremely strong. Okay. Even the Chief chairs a meeting on a monthly basis with those two individuals, Michelle Boujard and Joao Kamara as well. Okay,
thank you for that. You talked about training and you talked about the increased role of the Honorary Police from what it was when you started back in the 80s. What Honorary Police input is there into States of Jersey Police training?
Yeah.
So the actual input, vice versa, for Honorary Police into States of Jersey Police, I don't believe there is any established training. It's on the reciprocated that the learning and Department of States of Jersey Police do the training for the Honorary Police, but I don't think there's any effective Honorary.
So how do States Police officers then get to learn about the role of the Honorary Police, learn what they're for, learn what the history is, learn about their powers, etc.? So
that's through the learning, their 20-week probationary period. So we know from January we've got an in-house training programs now, 20 weeks. So that will be effective throughout their journey as a probationary police officer through the 2 years, through the basic foundations training, through to their tutorship, and then when they become independent. So throughout their whole journey. But effectively, we can say, Chair, actually every day, I think every police officer learns something new about the Honorary Police system, which is strong in tradition within Jersey.
But is there any, do you have an honorary police module as part of your training development?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. So it was very ad hoc, very informal. They would learn from other officers
Yes.
on the job, as it were, nothing formal. Would you support making a mandatory module for honorary police training?
Just making I can certainly take it back as we're actually developing the training. It makes sense to, but I can ask our L&D to
Would you
review
support
that.
that, Minister?
Yeah, I have no issue with that whatsoever. I think there's a value to all new officers to understanding the system properly and to be able to know that they've got a valuable resource, but also they can work together, because quite often there is a need to work together to be able to get the good results that you get.
You've talked about your training for your probationary constables, but we know you have a high level of transferees coming in from other forces in the UK, which, might be accustomed to working with special constables. What specific training do you have for those transferees to induct them into the ways of Jersey?
Should we start it?
Yeah.
So they have a 2-week transition from UK law to Jersey legislation, which includes the tradition and the use of the honorary police. Again, not too sure it's a formalised module, but I can certainly take that back to L&D.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to hand you over to the Connotab now.
Yeah. Minister, does the department have any oversight over SOJP control room procedures in relation to honorary police deployment?
I think I'll ask you, because there are given criteria in relation to force control room and the deployment, but I think Craig has probably got more recent knowledge than me.
Thanks, Minister. Contab, certainly there is a deployment criteria, but as the Minister alludes, we've got 12 honorary police parishes, so in essence 12 police forces, and each one operates on a slightly different basis. So there's not one formalised memorandum of understanding for deployment criteria, as each parish operates differently. However, like I say, within our Quality Assurance Board, João Camara sits in that and feeds through any issues that we have across the 12 parishes with regards to deployment.
So do you think that the Article 5A now it's been adopted by the 12 parishes, has that made any difference to you at all?
Yes, I certainly think them operating on a consistent basis will assist. I think it's too early to tell at this moment in time because it's only just been signed, but that will be monitored through the Quality Assurance Board.
Because we've had quite a number of cases, certainly in St One, where the honorary police have not been notified of some serious incidents. One in particular could have ended up in a fatality, and if the honorary police had been called before they weren't called, in fact, it would have made a huge difference to the result. I made a comment about that, and no one's ever come back to me about it. So it does concern me that when we have a problem, when we've mentioned this to yourselves, we're not getting any feedback. And it sort of seems to be ongoing that when I was a Centeneer, we had a lot of problems with, and the force control room was that they would turn the honorary police channel down. I mean, I've had to phone in myself to sign on, and I know they're still getting problems now with that.
Okay, well, I'm aware of the situation you alluded to, Connotab, and we can talk about that at the scrutiny panel if you wish to. However, like I said, the Quality Assurance Board is the governance board that deals with any issues, and it includes anything that the honorary police need, and it's fed through Michelle Boujard and João Camara. So apologies that you haven't had any feedback, but certainly that case has been discussed and fed through. And I was led to believe that the improvement with the radio and honorary police being answered to, I thought had got better, and certainly hasn't been fed back, that it's deteriorated. So if it hasn't, please feed back through to the Quality Assurance Board and we can deal with that.
It just concerns me a little bit where you say that there's that each parish works in a different way. I mean, surely that shouldn't cause a problem as far as the way that the force control room react to a problem. I mean, the way the honorary police they work, they have their own sort of way of working, but surely that wouldn't affect your input or the force control room's input into an incident, for instance.
Well, it may do, because if we've called St Helier for want of a parish who would answer the phone and they have officers deployable throughout the day. Some parishes won't have officers available during the day. As we know, it's a voluntary sector. And the control room try to call. There may be no answer to the phones, couldn't get through because people are in meetings, etc. So I say with 12 parishes operating slightly different, and if I can use road traffic collisions as a really good example, where I think we could utilise honoraries more effectively and efficiently, but some parishes want to be called out during the day, some parishes don't want to be, and out of office hours. So it is slightly effective and different within the control room. And within the control room, as you can imagine, it's a very busy place, and we just need one operating and one deployment criteria across the island.
So do you think having the force control room now sort of utilising a sort of a fire, ambulance and police, has that been an improvement, do you think? Or
So co-located, so the co-location certainly, and operating on the different sides, yes. However, the Quality Assurance Board monitors the performance indicators from the ESCC, and more importantly, looking at the efficiency and effectiveness of that control room, and the issues that you've alluded to, we're aware of and we deal with within that Quality Assurance Board.
okay, thanks. Probably the next question, probably we've really gone through. Are there any written protocols for notifying honorary police of incidents in their parish? There's nothing actually written as such, is there?
No.
Okay. Has the department explored providing access to SOJP systems to the honorary police officers, for honorary police officers?
What systems are you talking about?
Well, for instance, when, again, I was essentially, I know it still carries on, that when you've been called to an incident in St. Juan, and it could be, a domestic, all we get domestic, or if you've not been called to an RTC, no information about it. Whereas if you look on when we've had the community officer up, and I've mentioned, a certain problem that's been highlighted to me, he looks at his handheld computer, and it's got all the details of what went on, who was involved. Not that I get that information, obviously, because I have no policing powers, but it's just that there seems to be a bit of a sort of a gap, and it's something I know we've been speaking about for years, that I can't understand why the honorary police are excluded from certain information that's available to yourselves.
I think excluded is probably a strong word, because obviously with regards to data protection, information sharing agreements and digital devicing, it's not just about the issuing of that device. There's a lot more with the foundation. So we need to make sure that the person or the individual that has access to it has lawful access. So within the parish, and they're dealing with it. So it's need to know, not a nice to know situation. And we have got a working group working with honorary colleagues with regards to making sure that colleagues have the right access to the right logs and the right information. But as I said, it's not as easy as just issuing the device. It's making sure that when it's lost, it can be isolated. The governance around the data protection and the information is watertight as well. So we're aware of it and working, and we're working to look at a lead to actually issue that across the board.
It does seem a shame. There seems a huge sort of gap, bearing in mind that the vetting that all honorary police officers go through now. I can understand what you were saying, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, but now, I mean, everybody is vetted. I mean, and it takes 8 to 10 weeks to get the vetting through. So it's obviously not something that someone just looks at and says, yeah, that's okay. It just seems a shame that there's this sort of gap. Yeah. And I know it's when I was its engineer, it cropped up all the time where we were unaware of a situation. We could have had a situation where you've been to a domestic and there was, a major problem, and then we're called out, a couple of days later to the same place, not being aware of what has gone on a couple of days before.
Agreed, and we're working on to minimise that gap as well, Contact.
Super. Will the department fund IT upgrades or handheld devices to improve operational safety and information sharing between SOJP and the honorary police?
Are you talking about laptops and radios?
Laptops have been provided for engineers. And I'm just looking at handheld devices, which really leads on for what I was saying to Craig before, is that there's a lot of information that we should be made aware of when we're called to a situation, and we don't know what's gone on before. Whereas they can just turn up a log on their handheld, and it tells them a history of what has gone on there, how many times you've been called out, what the problem was. So what we're looking to do, and this has been going on for a number of years, is for the Honorary Police to be issued with handheld and have the same information that is available to the SOJP officer.
Right, I see. Right, there's two different questions there. Access to information is what Craig was talking about previously. In relation to the funding for handheld systems, of course, the States of Jersey Police aren't responsible for the funding of equipment for the honoraries, because it's not within the budgets of the States of Jersey Police. It's the Honorary Police sit under the Attorney General. As you will be aware, in relation to the funding of the laptops, that came out of the COCF.
Yep.
We don't have call on that funding either. It is the Attorney General and the Treasury Minister. So, of course, from our perspective, we don't have the budget to be able to fund that. So, if the question you're asking me is, should they be provided with up-to-date equipment? The answer to that is yes, the same as the laptops. But we, as a department, do not have the funding to do that.
But if it was funded by the Honorary Police, would you support the issue of those, or are you still looking at potential of the information that's being supplied at the present shouldn't be supplied or can't be supplied?
I think
like the Minister alludes to, the information security side, we're working on with our information security managers and also the Honorary Police to actually how we can minimise that gap. But again, the issuing of devices as well, it comes with funding, but also the infrastructure behind it. So if it's lost or it fails, who's the support mechanism behind that? It's a lot to work out. It's not just the issuing of the devices. And again, it comes with the reoccurring financial funding of those devices when they come out of software or they get lost. Who funds and where's the funding coming from for replacement?
Well, the same thing with the radios. All the handheld radios, had to be upgraded, or I think there's been extended another 2 years, is it? I think now, and then they'll be replaced. But again, there's ongoing question as to who's going to pay for those. But it was just that it's something that keeps being brought up to me all the time about these handheld systems, and I can see, as I say, that potential problems could arise, the fact that we're not having the information that we require. And I think it's something that, I'd certainly appreciate someone looking into, and if we could, come to a conclusion on it. Can you let me know your views on the current parish-based funding model for the Honorary Police? Is it equitable and sustainable?
in relation to funding for what?
The current funding model for the Honorary Police. Obviously, it's funded by parishes, isn't it?
Yes, well, I think the thing is that that's the question, isn't it? The parishes fund the purchase of a vehicle, for example, but I don't think that each parish actually provides the same funding. So I think that's a bit of a, not an unanswerable question, but some parishes will pay officers for certain things, others don't. Some, they provide equipment, the uniforms. So, and the parishes buy the vehicles. The question is, as an island, if we are going to keep the Honorary Police, do we want to fund them in a different way? And that would be a decision for the island to make as to whether they would want to fund it in a different way, because they sit under the Attorney General, they don't sit under the States of Jersey Police. So if they want to fund them in a different way, they would have to all be funded in the same way. So effectively, if you were going to have 12 parishes and you decide to fund them in a different way to how they're funded already, you'd have to say, right, each person, whichever parish, each person will get the same. So if they, I don't know what they all get, but if you were going to provide the uniform, as you do with the States of Jersey Police, police officer has 2 shirts, 2 pairs of trousers, pair of boots or whatever, then each person joining the Honorary Police would have to have the same given kit, and they would each all have to be, whether if it was a set of this or a set of that, everybody would have to have the same. And if you look across the island, each parish has different vehicles. Well, if you were going to fund it in a different way and the parishes weren't going to fund them, then they're going to have an agreement across the board that you will all have the same. So, because at the moment, obviously SOJP, I don't know about now, but in the past, the States of Jersey Police would assist the Honorary Police in being able to try and get good deals in relation to vehicles under the umbrella of what was, and I can't remember what they were called, but they were basically the central purchasing group here.
That doesn't happen now, unfortunately.
No, but the whole point is each different parish pays a different amount for their vehicle. So you would have to say, if you decide to go into a different model, where does the funding come from? Where does it sit? And, how are you going to manage that? Because you would obviously have to manage it in the same way. So each parish would get the same vehicle. Each parish would get the same amount of equipment. Everything would have to be across the board the same.
I don't think it has to be the same. I just think they would need access to funding. So I don't think it would necessarily mean every parish has to have the same car, or every parish has to have the same uniform, but it would be access to the funding to support vehicles.
I don't agree with that at all, I'm afraid, because I think if you're going to find a central way to fund things, then you wouldn't be able to have a parish having a car that costs 40,000 and somebody that has one that costs 25.
But it would depend on an initial allocation. If there was a central fund that allocated a certain amount of money towards a vehicle, it would then be down to the ratepayers to decide whether they would purchase a van or a better quality of vehicle.
Or potentially, I suppose, if if the parishioners wanted to pay, but the parishioners at the moment pay, they decide what's going to be bought and what isn't. It goes to the parish assembly, so they decide what they are or aren't. But there is a very different thing across the board as to what is and isn't being paid. I mean, my view is if you're going to centrally fund them, then they should be centrally funded and they should be given the same allocation of funding. But because I question then, if you're going to go across and say there's an allocation of funding, where does that leave the smaller parishes compared to the bigger parishes? And so some parishes may fund their honorary police in a larger way than some of the smaller parishes do now. So if you move it away from a parish funding, then you then could end up in a situation which would be not equitable, because you'd have some of the bigger parishes having more money to spend on a vehicle than some of the smaller ones. At the moment, each parish decides. So for me, I have a different view. I think if you're going to fund it in a different way, then that needs to be across the board so that it's fair and equitable for each parish to not at all based on their size and ability to actually up the funding to get something better in a better class. Because from my perspective, what you would have is you'd have a parish that had this and somebody that had that. And then the public would say, well, hang on a minute, this is all centrally funded and this is what's happened here. And then to me, that would make the system inequitable across the island.
Why do SOJP now not supply sort of uniform like they were doing sort of 4 or 5 years ago? Because we're actually now funding from sort of obviously retail companies in the UK, whereas 4 or 5 years ago we were buying directly from SOJP, which was.
I didn't know it was ever bought from the PAC.
Can I just explore this issue about funding a little bit further? In the UK, clearly you have special constables. The town isn't expected to provide the cars, the uniform, the radios, the licences and everything else. Clearly, the Honorary Police is a very important part of policing and community safety to the island. And I think the fundamental question is we need the Honorary Police to continue. I don't know if any work has been done to understand what the impact would be on States of Jersey Police numbers and the cost that it would have to increase those numbers in order to provide the service that Honorary Policing is already providing. So I think the fundamental question is, we're not in 1900 anymore, when there was very low cost to Honorary Police. Is it acceptable in 2025 that we're expecting the ratepayers to be funding, to the extent that they are, the provision of Jersey's supplementary policing force?
I think, as I've said, I have no issue with a central funding system. All I was saying to you is that, in my view, it has to be fair and impartial across the board. I have, you know,
So are you saying that then you would support
Yeah, I
more
have no issue.
funding to go into the honorary police?
I have no issue if the State Assembly decided that they want the honorary police.
But what are your
to be funded.
views?
Yeah, I don't. For me, I think there's a value to the honorary police. I think there's an absolute value to the honorary police. I can't tell you, because I don't look at every single rates, how much each parish spends on the honorary police. I have no idea about that. So, of course, the thing is as well, if they weren't funding the honorary police, what would as a parishioner, as a ratepayer, if the parishes weren't providing the funding for the honorary police, because the uniforms and the cars or whatever they fund, therefore, what would the parishes, would that mean that the rates would go down for the parishioners? And if not, what are they going to spend the money on instead? Because, of course, where's...
I think the issue is, for you as minister, if the honorary police become more depleted than they are already, do you understand what operational impact that would have on States of Jersey Police?
Because I've worked with it for 25 years. I understand fully, and I'm saying to you that I would support central funding. But my idea of central funding is fair and impartial across the board, and you would have to look at what was being funded through the parishes, because if you're going to put it as a central fund, I'm asking the question, does that mean that, because the money would have to be found from somewhere...
Would you be prepared as Home Affairs Minister to put it into your budget?
I wouldn't mind if it was in the budget, but the budget has to be provided.
But would you argue that you want that money provided in your budget as Home Affairs Minister?
I don't. I'd have no problem with it at all. The only trouble is who's going to manage that budget, because at the moment.
But I think that's getting to the detail. I mean,
yeah, but obviously, that detail's important.
So in principle, you would be happy to put
makes no difference to me whatsoever.
Funding of honorary policing
makes no difference
into the Home Affairs budget. Okay, thank you.
Because to give you an idea, we've this year's budget for the honorary police is 26,000. Plus, we've just spent bought another car, which was 54,000.
But that's the parish of St. Warren.
It is the parish of St. Warren. No, I'm just giving you an idea. Craig wasn't sure, or Mary wasn't sure of the money that was being put in. I mean, a lot of the parishes pay a lot more. Whereas before, when we used to buy a car, it was bought through the States of Jersey Police. But I think the way you fund vehicles now is more on a
leasing framework.
Yeah, which is not a way that the honorary police. I remember bringing it up a couple of years ago, where there was a way that we could sort of tag on to getting cars through yourselves as we did before.
I think the thing is that what is fundamentally important is that if the parishes are currently funding them, does this mean that the parishes will be charging less rates to the ratepayers? Because what we will be asking, I think it's important, because what we're asking is, we're asking as an island to fund the honorary police, which is fine, no problem with that. However, if the parishes aren't funding them, what does that mean to the parishes? Does that mean that that ratepayers will be paying less? Because I think the thing is, from the public's perspective...
Potentially, yeah.
Well, that's what I'm asking the question, because from the public's perception, if they're going to have to pay for the honorary police and the States of Jersey Police, where do they see the benefit?
Thank you. I'm going to move on to Catherine's questions now. Thank you.
Yes, I have some questions about recruitment and retention, but first of all, I'd just like to quickly come back to something that the Connotar was asking about, which is about the gap in information received by honorary officers about a particular incident compared to the States of Jersey police officers. I just wanted to ask, do you think that could put those honorary officers in danger potentially if they don't have the information about what they're going into a property for?
I think the thing is that we need to establish whether, if this is an ongoing occurrence, and I think that Craig can probably answer that better than me, but I think the point is as well, there needs to be proper agreement as to what you would send honorary police officers to anyway.
But do you think it could potentially put them in danger?
I don't believe it puts them in any increased danger, because the information at the time, if they're being deployed at the time through the control room, they're getting the up-to-date risks and information about that incident. I think what the Contab is the information that you get live time on mobile data. So they're still getting the risks, the warnings through the emergency services control room centre about that incident they're dealing with. So any risks of the nominals within that address as well. So I don't think there is any increased risk. They're getting the same information that a States of Jersey police officer would have at that time.
Okay, so they wouldn't be going into a property where they didn't know, for example, that there'd been a domestic incident or something.
Anytime that can happen is if we're phoned directly or contacted directly, and then it's down to the honorary police to say, we've been called to such a domestic, then they'll say, there's a firearms licence there, or there's drug-related, so we do have that information, I must admit.
Yes, if the control room doesn't know that you're self-deploying, for want of a better phrase, or only self-deployed, then it could be a risk there. But if the control room know and they're deploying them, then I think the risk is the same.
Okay, thank you. So if I just get back to these questions about recruitment and retention, Minister, do you think that government employees who wish to volunteer as honorary officers are supported consistently across departments?
I wouldn't be able to say if there were consistency. I know that there's a number of people who are actually in the honorary police. However, of course, they still have a day job, like most honorary police do. So in relation to them being able to be called out from their work, I would imagine that it would be based on the nature of the event that actually was, because you know, if you can't have somebody doing a job within the States of Jersey or in anything else to be called out to deal with, you know, a minor road traffic collision, for example, because they do have day jobs. And I think the difference with what was historically to what it is now is that the same as with the States Assembly, people were in the States Assembly unpaid, and they basically had a business. And I think the honorary police has changed significantly from what was in the past. So now people have a job. So it's a lot more difficult to be able to deploy honorary police officers during the week, unlike what used to happen.
Do you think that needs looking at a bit more about how government supports its own staff who wish to work in the honorary police as well?
I think it's very difficult, isn't it? Because I think the support can be there, but it depends on the role of actually what the person does. So you might have somebody who works in the hospital. You might have somebody who's working as a controller in the force control room. You might have people working in critical areas that aren't going to be able to leave their post to be able to go and deal with something as an honorary police officer. So I think it's very difficult to have a collective type of scenario.
Are there plans to provide practical or financial incentives to encourage volunteering?
I don't think that has been considered, because if you're the point is that if you're going to do that, then that doesn't mean it's any longer an honorary system. So I think that, you know, you need to be careful about how you actually do decide how you're going to deal with this moving forward, is my view.
Okay, so sort of leading on from that, does the Minister consider the voluntary model sustainable for the future? Because now, as you've mentioned, so many more people have jobs, perhaps running, rather than in the past running their own flexible business. Is it still sustainable for people to just be volunteers and without support?
I think it's sustainable. I just think that in reality, you aren't able to deploy the honorary police as much as you used to in the past, because the dynamics of it has changed. I think as well that the role has changed significantly, and I think Craig had mentioned earlier to me that you know, the exact criteria of what they're deployed to needs to be, you know, redefined as well. The thing is if you end up paying people, you will end up in what is the same as the UK, which is your specials, because they're paid.
So you wouldn't be in support of payments?
Well, I think the thing is that I wouldn't say. I think that from my perspective, you have to look at what would you be paying and therefore, if you're going to be paying a significant amount of money, is that extra necessary, or should you actually be increasing the amount of police officers you have in the States of Jersey Police? So you can't say one thing without looking at the other, is what I would suggest. You'd have to look at the whole thing and decide if you're going to invest and start paying the honorary police, then what are you going to pay them, and how are you going to balance that against whether you should actually be just having more States of Jersey police officers? And I'm not saying that that is what I would want, because I actually think there's huge value in the honorary police.
Okay, so seeing as there are pressures on honorary officers and the recruitment of them, would you have any plans to actually look into that?
I think there's no issue with looking at, the sustainability of it. And I don't know, I couldn't actually say how long this has been going on, but I think it is because of the fact that people have jobs and aren't able to be deployed as easily as they were in the past. And I think we need to accept that that's reality, and it may be that we need to adjust our thinking and actually what they're deployed to do.
Okay, so I have a few questions more about the oversight and so on. So how do you view the balance between parish autonomy and government oversight in policing matters?
What exactly are you asking there?
So it's about policing matters, and where does the oversight lie? Is it in the parish, or is it more in government?
Well, the deployment of the honorary police is overseen, if you like, by the States of Jersey Police, because they've deployed them to something. In relation to what they voluntarily do, in relation to speed checks and road checks and all of that, the States of Jersey Police and the Honorary Police actually closely liaise with one another to do those pieces of work. So when you're talking about, the Honorary Police basically tell SOJP what they're doing. I can't say at the moment whether they still task and coordinate in the same way as they used to, but certainly, from the point of view of the oversight, the States of Jersey Police will know what the Honorary Police are doing because the Honorary Police will tell them, but they're not in control of them because they are not managed by them. This is very different to the UK, because in the UK, specials are managed by special ranked people alongside, they're deployed under the umbrella of the place where they are, whereas here, the Honorary Police are not managed by the States of Jersey Police.
So you think that works well?
I think it works. I've got no issues. I don't know whether any of my colleagues have had issues with how they're deployed or how it works.
I think the operational practice actually works very well, but as the Minister alludes, we're not in control of the governance and the oversight of the honorary police system.
Yeah. Okay. But would there be a role for the department to advise parishes on best practice for things like recruitment and training?
I think the thing is that there is a working relationship between the Honorary Police and the States of Jersey Police in relation to probably not so much the recruitment and selection, but certainly from the point of view of whether, when they're recruited and whether and I think Craig's probably going to be able to explain better in relation to the actual sort of facilities that are offered for new recruits.
Do you mind if, Chair, just an observation, and on that point, and I think I would refer to one of the questions that you posed us in the written submission around how do the States of Jersey Police perceive the role of the Honorary Police. Everything I've heard today, whether we look at training, equipment, MOU, money, strips it right back to a fundamental question in terms of how does the island wish its honorary police service to, or what function do they wish the honorary service to perform? Because, of course, it's very, very difficult to develop or enhance a relationship unless we, the Honorary Police and the States of Jersey Police and government fundamentally understand exactly, or not necessarily exactly, but the role that the honorary officer or the parish is going to adopt at any given time, because then we can develop or we can enhance a relationship that we already have. So I've been now in Jersey for 28 years. I've worked with specials in the UK. Prior to that, I've worked with the Honorary Police Service. I see huge value in the Honorary Service. But one of the questions I always come back to is, I think if we put a straw poll and asked the public and the parishes the role of the Honorary Police, I think we would get lots of different answers. I think we could fundamentally enhance everything we do with the Honorary Service if we were able to bring the function a little more centrally in terms of understanding exactly what the parish and the honorary officers at this moment in time, today, tomorrow, and it goes back as well, doesn't it, to the recruitment question. So how would we recruit an honorary officer tomorrow? What would we say? What would we say we're going to ask them to do? And I think if we pose that question, we would have a number of different answers. And so I think to try and answer all of your questions this morning, if we were able to get a more consistent view in terms of what the JD would say for an honorary officer tomorrow, I think would vastly improve everything that we do on a daily basis.
Because, of course, each parish does provide a different service, I'd suggest.
But that would maybe suggest something more consistent. That's
Some
really
of them, I think, they see it completely differently. I mean, I know from sort of certainly the west of the island, they all work together very well. They're always out. We had 2 or 3 units out on Saturday and Sunday this week, and they're saying they work with St Peter's, St Bernard's, but some of them, don't do quite as much. So
I think they all do a huge amount, but it's in terms of, then you might, for example, then look at the information sharing, because of course information sharing with one particular function is very different from another function, and so you have to have a tiered approach. You have to look at why you are sharing information at any given point in time, depending upon the function that is being supplied. But I think if it goes back to the recruitment question, would St Peter's or St Wands recruit a different volunteer tomorrow compared to St John's? And if they were, then how do we best apply our processes to those different relationships?
Yeah, so that's quite a challenge that there's all these different ways of doing it in each parish. Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's why the Article 5A is such a, it's going to be such a bonus that it's taken 10 years. Hard work.
Stronger together in its consistency and collaborative approach, and that's it.
I think it's very good.
The question you have to ask is that if you're asking people to volunteer for something, do they have to all have the same criteria? Because different people may want to do something different.
Just coming back to the question I asked about the role for the department to advise parishes on best practice, which we were just discussing on recruitment and so on. We've heard about the States of Jersey Police and what they do. Is there actually something more that the Home Affairs Department itself could do? Because of this lack of consistency and so on, just bringing things together.
I don't really know what you're asking me.
I'm asking you if there's more that your department could do to assist the States of Jersey Police and the Honorary Police in the difficulties around inconsistencies.
Maybe I can answer that, Minister. I mean, the Learning and Development Department within the States of Jersey Police provide training for honorary police officers. It's on a voluntary basis. It's not a pass or fail. It's an upskilling and education. So, in short, for a States of Jersey Police officer, it's over 600 hours contact time over a 2-year period. And then after that, it's another 112 hours of training, which is scrutinised, and it's a pass or fail. However, for an honorary officer, it's 28 hours over a couple of days with development days and development opportunities for scenario days, which is feedback and development driven rather than a pass or fail scenario based. But if you were recruited in the States of Jersey Police officer, it's a pass or fail with consistently being developed and analysed. So we, States of Jersey Police do provide the upskilling and training for honorary officers. Yeah. However, it's on a voluntary basis.
Okay, so the States of Jersey Police have that role. I just was trying to find out if the actual minister and the department would take some leadership on this issue, where they're appear to be issues with lack of consistency in
come in,
recruitment.
Sure.
So it's not something we've turned our attention to so far. Obviously, we have regard to the outcome of the panel's review. I think where we are active in the space is through the Building a Safer Community framework. So there's good engagement from Kirsty Mosley, the coordinator, with the chefs and increasingly across different parishes, really primarily to build understanding of the framework, but also respond to feedback from the Honorary Police through the chefs that they don't really know what it means yet, which is understandable because it's, beginning to make a difference and make an impact. And we've seen various pockets of activity like the engagement at St Bernard's Bay and also at Half the Power around antisocial behaviour and littering concerns, where the BAS framework provided a vehicle for everyone involved in that to get together, probably understand what the problem is and then agree on solutions. So I think the more we do work like that, the more the department can have a role through the Building a Safer Community framework in helping with some of the inconsistency, but that is on that level rather than on an operational policing or training level, and certainly not anything to do with resourcing of the Honorary Police. That's not an area we've probably considered yet.
Should I just ask you, Craig, you mentioned that training is done voluntarily. In what respect? Because the Honorary Police pay the States Jersey Police for the training. And basically, without the first sort of induction, they can't operate as an honorary police officer. The problem at the moment is that the training is, and we've got 5 new officers to be sworn in. 3 we've had vetting back on 3. We haven't 2. Now the next training is in February. Now, if we miss that because it's getting full, there's not going to be another training period for months, and I think there's another one in about September. So that's a problem that we're finding, that because we wouldn't put anyone out on the street, as it were, without the correct sort of training and correct procedure using radio and things like that. But again, that's something that we're doing ourselves because, as I say, but it is a cost to the Honorary Police, and it's a shame there's not more of it, really.
I think the difficulty is that because of the way the Honorary Police work is that it's literally every other week there's somebody being sworn in the Royal Court next door from whichever parish. And of course, to be able to provide the training, you can't sporadically do it. There has to be some sort of, identification that you're not going to be able to do it every other week. It's the same as recruitment of police officers. You recruit, that's why we ask for 10, because you recruit them all, you do all their training, and then they've got a programme over the 2-year period. Yeah. And of course, that's the problem, because it's February and September, but in actual fact, there'll be people probably every week, but there is literally all the time a turnover of Honorary Police.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to firearms certificates now. I think some of the remaining questions we can either put to you in writing, but I think you've answered quite a lot anyway. So, Minister, firearms certificates, as we know, a number of active licences is 1,096, with a number of firearms and component parts totalling 8,243. And as we know that the CONOTAB are responsible for granting firearm certificates. So we're really interested to hear your views on the governance and management of firearm certificates and how effective you think the current system is to ensure public safety, consistency and proper oversight across the island.
As you are aware, myself and I asked the Conotable of St Wands if it would do a piece of work, and in fact we've got a meeting later today in relation to some of those things in order to alleviate some of the concerns in relation to numbers that are out there. I'm going to ask Chris to who leads on the firearms element of it to run through what his perception of it is.
Thank you, Minister. Yes, we have been working very closely for many years with the constables, whose responsibility it is, of course, to licence firearms. Of particular note is that in September last year, we determined it was right to have a conversation with the Conotabs about opportunities to reduce the risk, perhaps is a good way of putting it, that I think all the constables and ourselves are acutely aware of. Before we did that, we did some research with various incidents, albeit not in Jersey, because thankfully we've been spared such a matter. But if you look back at the history in the UK, all the way back to Dunblane and since, there have been a number of coronial reviews that have been adopted on the back of such tragedies, all of which come to the very sort of similar conclusions. The main one being is that firearms licensing is complex, is really complex, and it's important that those who are responsible for that, and this is why we're doing the work with the Conotabs, is that there is clear guidance about how to license a firearm. There is clear guidance that was adopted by the Conotabs a number of years ago and is regularly updated, and that has to be the first point of reference when looking at any form of licensing. Inquiry, administration, good decision making is fundamental when looking at entrusting anyone with a firearm, and training and accreditation is important. And the constables work very closely with the States of Jersey Police and regularly ask for, or we regularly discuss particular cases. And then through all of that work, it's really important that we focus on a manner in which, or the ways in which, risk can be reduced. And the work that is currently ongoing between ourselves and the Conotabs is looking at a number of different ways to further improve the situation that we currently have.
Thank you for that overview. So do you still think it's acceptable in 2025 that the Conotab with the parish is the one that grants the firearm certificate?
I think that's a difficult question for States of Jersey Police to answer. The law states that the Conotabs are responsible for issuing the licence. The States of Jersey Police's function here is to administer the firearms index, the central firearms index, and through that function we have regular conversations, or our firearms registry officer has regular conversations with the constables and the staff within each of the parishes, collectively to adopt the best practice that I'd previously spoken about, and the requirements of the law.
I mean, you talk about the best practice guidance. It's not statutory, and clearly, Minister, you've said that the firearms law review has been postponed. So given the postponement of that law review, so that we would actually be changing the articles in law to do different things, how are you ensuring that the current system remains effective and responsive to emerging safety concerns?
I think first and foremost, you're right in relation to the legislation. That is why I asked the States of Jersey Police and I asked the Comité de Conotab to see if we were able to do something, because there wasn't going to be sufficient time to be able to do the whole overhaul of the firearms law. And so that's why the constables have made some suggestions along with the States of Jersey Police to be able to reduce an ability to have large quantities of ammunition and other things. And the process is ongoing and hopefully will soon be resolved, because we are obviously speaking to other parties as well. I think there is always going to be concerns about firearms. I mean, in the UK, it's a different system to what we have here, but they still have significant incidents in relation to firearms. I'm not an expert in firearms, and so from my perspective, as I said, the law needs to be updated, and when the law is updated, it will need to look at all of these things in the round and make some decisions about whether there are things that we can do to make it better than it already is, having done some of the work that we've been doing over the last, 8 months. I don't know if you want to add anything.
In relation to risk, at the moment it is volunteers, it is honorary police officers that are doing the checks, the physical checks on firearms, licensees. Are you satisfied that those people have the necessary knowledge, skills and experience to do those checks and to not be putting themselves at risk whilst they're doing them?
Of course, under the law, that is the constable needs to be satisfied that the officers that are conducting those checks have the necessary skills, experience, know what they're looking for, and that information then is fed back to the constable for their decision-making process with regards to the licence. I think it's important for us all who are involved in firearms licensing, and I would take it back to my sort of opening piece around the fact that this is a really difficult and complex piece of work and responsibility, which is why, in terms of the overall mitigation that we're trying to further develop with the constables, and we've already spoken about a possible review of the firearms legislation to the future, it is really important to, on every single occasion, apply consistent decision-making to the rules and regulations and the guidance with regards to firearms licensing.
Do you, as States of Jersey Police, then have any role in the compliance with those guidance, and that how do you know that the person in a certain parish is doing the right thing when?
We don't have a direct day-to-day involvement in those checks. We, of course, help the committee develop the guidance in the first place, and it is the constables who then use that document, that good practice guide, as their Bible in terms of their decision making.
So do States of Jersey Police ever ask the Constable any questions about how they're each following that guidance when it comes to firearms?
No, that's not our role. We have day-to-day conversations with the constables with regards to perhaps a situation that the constable wishes to discuss with us, and I mentioned before that our firearms registry officer will probably speak to a number of different parishes on a daily basis to help the constable make or to help in their decision making. But all of that decision making is anchored on the law, and all of that decision making is anchored on the good practice guidance. The important thing is that through that day-to-day work, that the 12 parishes make similar or the same decision in each given set of scenarios.
But States of Jersey Police have no role in checking that?
No, we don't.
Yeah, what I would say is that certainly a number of the parishes actually have, I would suggest, firearms experts within their honorary police remit.
Is that experts through firearms users or experts through qualification?
That I don't 100% know. I'd have to find out, because there's a number. They're not all across there's not all the case, but there are certainly some that have a very good understanding of firearms. So obviously, from the point of view of what's being asked for and the conditions
do you keep a
storage.
register as part of the Central Firearms Index of the people who are inspecting premises and their qualifications?
Not a register, no. If I spoke to my registry officer, they would be aware of the individuals within the parishes, but we don't keep a record of that.
That is one thing in this review that we've been doing, that it will be sort of mandatory that they do attend a course with Jerry Cobar. So they'll all be singing from the same hymn sheet.
And in terms, just for me to finish off this section, Sorry, it's just gone out of my head now. Completely. Go on, Richard. Go on. You go. It'll come back to me in a second. You go on to the
I think
questions.
that you probably answered most of this, Chris. Can you elaborate on the primary reasons for introducing new restrictions on firearms in Jersey, and what specific concerns or incidents prompted this decision?
So I think I would, in two parts. The first part in terms of general themes, I think I've already answered. This is a complex area. It's important that the same decision is made in any given set of circumstances, whether it be in one parish or another. It is all about targeting the risk. One of the key pieces of work that we are currently engaged with at present, and I know that the constables are challenging in terms of promoting is a better word, is that currently 90% of all certificates that are issued by the Connotabs, it effectively states on the licence that the firearm can only be used on an approved range. So one of the pieces of work that we're really clear on and we think would make a huge amount of difference in terms of the risk is that if the firearm is only to be used on an approved range, the question has to be asked, why does the person require ammunition at their home address? Now, it appears to the States of Jersey Police, that the Connotabs are fully on board with regard to this particular element. This was introduced in Guernsey 15 years ago. And so that question is, what is a good reason? What is the necessary reason for someone to hold ammunition at home when actually 90% of the time they can take their firearm to a range, acquire ammunition at the range, shoot the weapon, and then take it home? In terms of reducing the risk, that fundamentally reduces the risk, because if there is no ammunition in a home environment, then there is no opportunity for something that happens outside of the club environment. I think that is fundamental to this piece of work that we are working on at the present time.
And I think it's fair to say that some constables have already been doing exactly that anyway.
Which raises the issue about consistency again, doesn't it? Because you look at a shooter, if you live in a particular parish, you're under a certain set of circumstances, but if you live in a different parish, you may have another set of circumstances whereby you are able to keep ammunition at home. And I think that comes back to the issue about the legislation and the kind of urgency for that. It's just come back to me what I was going to ask, actually. At the moment, the resource that you have dedicated to firearms in the States of Jersey Police amounts to one person.
Correct.
What succession planning have you got in place for that person who has been in post for a very long time?
So actually, we have just employed a new States of Jersey Police firearms index employee on the basis that we've already mentioned his name. Jerry had determined that he'd spent sufficient time doing that particular role and was now moving on. So we have a new incumbent by the name of Dan Robinson, who has already started, is working alongside Jerry and will be and is now fulfilling that role on our behalf. Okay. Jerry remains in the building and will be providing advice and guidance as we go forward, but there is a new incumbent, so we have already succession planned for a new officer into that post.
And in terms of advice and guidance, I think the public needs to be quite clear that that is the only role for States of Jersey Police. The law says you maintain the firearms register, and actually the incumbent has been going above and beyond to advise Connotab. One of the things that has come up across the board really is the use of medicinal cannabis. What advice are States of Jersey Police giving to Connotab about people who may be using medicinal cannabis and who are firearms holders?
We have not provided any formal advice in that regard. The Connotab, through their licensing process, has the ability to conduct doctor checks, which would may very well be to the future a question that could be posed through that through that checking process.
Because currently in the law it refers to mental health conditions, doesn't it? I think.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I would see that would be the opportunity.
If I could just add there that it is again part of the review. That it's going to be the responsibility of the certificate holder to provide the information from the doctor rather than the parish approach the doctor in the first instance. So the doctor, will have to confirm that the information that's been given to us, or any further information that we require, will be actually given to us by the certificate holder. And also with that is that we will also be requesting that the certificate holder supplies information from any clubs that they say they belong to, and also the frequency that they actually use the club. Because again, as we've said before, if you don't shoot, why do you want ammunition? So that is something that's hopefully we can put to bed this afternoon.
Thank you. Catherine?
Okay. So considering the lack of legal authority to suspend firearms certificates, because connotabs can revoke or refuse but not suspend them, what measures are in place to address situations where immediate action is required to ensure public safety?
Should that information be presented to the State of Jersey Police, then we both have the power to enter to premise to deal with a particular situation in conjunction with the connotab, and whilst that particular element in terms of suspension is not possible, then the State of Jersey Police, working with the parish, would have the opportunity to seize the weapons and then to work with the constable in terms of the return or not of those weapons in good time. So there is opportunity for us to intervene in those particular circumstances, and then we would work with the constable in terms of how to best manage the situation thereafter.
Oh, okay. So SOJP can step in
Yes,
and
absolutely.
seize weapons.
Yes,
If there's any
yeah. Should we feel
concerns.
there's a threat to an individual or yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Connotab, did you have any further questions?
No, I think a lot more will come to light once we've agreed the various bits and pieces that we've been looking at. And I think it'll, as we said at the start, it won't affect the legitimate shooter, but it will affect the people that are hiding behind a club membership to retain firearms and ammunition. And I think it's down to as I say, the constables are fully briefed on what we need. So we've done away with wish lists 2 years ago, although I must admit I'm still seeing from some of the parishes still with a number of firearms on there, which again is something I'm going to bring up at the next committee to connotab, to just to make sure that when the certificate comes up, they just take it off immediately. Even if it's for variation, we just take any wish list off.
And of course, this was just as an interim because of the fact if we were unable to do a proper new firearms law, because we need one.
Sorry, Chair, can I just add, and the Council makes a very, very good point there, is that one of the fundamental, or the fundamental question that the connotab must ask whenever issuing a licence is the good reason to hold a firearm.
Well, that's one thing that you came up with. It was good reason and reduce risk, and that's the basis of our review, basically.
Yes.
Do you have any further questions? I know we're coming to the end of our time. We've sort of got one minute left. I think you've been fairly guarded in some of your responses around the provision of firearm certificates. Obviously, we do it very differently here from the UK. In an ideal world, if we were working on a new firearms law, would the role of the parish remain to the same extent, or would it be reduced?
Honestly, no. Because I actually think it should be a central location in order that it can be properly managed and it's fair and across the board. So in actual fact, from my perspective, I think that firearms should be managed from a central location.
Okay, thank you very much for your candour. Is there anything else that the panel would like to ask us or tell us that we haven't asked already?
I think so. No.
Okay, in that case, I shall draw the meeting to a close and